Hey YouTube, I can say that someone besides myself will view this video. And you may be thinking that there is always that small chance that I'm the only one that will ever view it and that no one else ever will. But if you were able to think of that and put it in the comments, then you just heard what I just said, which means that someone else did view this video. So it became true the instant that you heard it. But if you never heard it, then it would have never been true in the first place. You would have never known that I just told a lie on YouTube, even though I did before you viewed the video. But how do we know anything at all? So I thought of two different ways you can interpret this question. One, how do we know anything, period, like process it through our brain? How are we conscious? And two, how do we know anything that anyone else tells us? Like, how do we know that the earth is round and not flat? First, I'm going to answer the first question. How do we know anything at all? First, how do we know that we are ourselves and not just like a simulation in the Matrix or inside a dream or something crazy like that? There's a famous quote, "We think, therefore we are." And this quote kind of means that we are ourselves because we're able to think. It doesn't really matter if we're in a simulation or dream. We're thinking, therefore we are ourselves. But what would happen if we were to wake up or come out of the simulation? What would it be like? I was thinking, if we came out of the dream, maybe we'd have a little more limitations, because it seems like inside our own dreams, we're like able to fly or run super fast or something like that. So if we wake up, I feel like we'd have more limitations on our abilities to move. But it also seems like we'd be smarter, because if you ever think that when you wake up from a dream, you just seem more intelligent then, and you realize what's actually happening, not just like kind of floating through a dream. And then the next question is, how do we know that everyone else also exists? The quote says, "We think, therefore we are," but it doesn't say anything about they think, therefore they are, because we don't know that they are thinking. There's a chance that they're just figments of our imagination, part of our dream. And it doesn't really matter, once again, whether or not they're part of our dream or not. What they're telling us is what we believe in. But why? You ever think back to when friends tell you stuff? There's some friends that they tell you stuff and you believe it, and others that you don't. Now, thinking back, what about our memory? How does that work? If you think about your memory, it's based off of previous experiences. So what about a baby that doesn't have any senses when it's born? Turns out I wasn't the only one that thought of this. When I researched it, there was a thread on what people thought would happen. Some of them would think that the baby wouldn't survive long enough, but that's not the purpose of the question. It's what would they think of? And quite frankly, they wouldn't be able to identify themselves. So they probably wouldn't be able to think, because we think, therefore we are. If they're not able to identify themselves, then do they not think then? But starting to get off track, let's get back to why we trust other people. So in English, you'd learn that there are three things that make you trust someone: logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos being if it's a logical appeal, like it makes sense. Ethos, if they're credible as a person, like some kind of doctor or has a PhD or something like that. Or three, if it applies emotionally to you. But to some people that isn't enough. They think that it's possible that even though NASA has credibility and everything they say makes sense, it could just all be a conspiracy. So how do we know that they're telling the truth? Like, what if the earth is actually flat? Now, first of all, Mythbusters had tested myths that helped prove that the earth is not flat and that gravity actually exists. But that falls under the same thing. Maybe they're part of the conspiracy. So how do we know that everything isn't a conspiracy? Once again, there's a small chance that the earth is actually flat and everything's a conspiracy. But what would people gain from telling us these lies? If the earth is flat instead of round, it doesn't really change our lives, so what's the point of telling us that the earth is round if it's really flat? There really isn't anything. If they're out in space and they see earth and they take a picture, there's not like any point for them to like hide all the flat pictures and make a fake looking earth picture of it being round. They just don't gain anything from it, so they must be telling the truth. This is what I really think it comes down to, is what would they gain by telling us these lies? If they don't gain anything, probably telling the truth. It's the simplest way I could debunk the conspiracy. You accept that reality is reality. It just makes things so much easier. Maybe interesting to think of things as a conspiracy, but just probably isn't. So there's not really any point in thinking that it is. So as maybe having a good conversation or having an interesting video on YouTube. But beyond that, it's kind of pointless. So subscribe, like, comment. See you on Friday.
Sharing is caring.